RUDTFF.
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Welcome back to hashtag DTFF, the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast, folks. Happy Tuesday. Happy birthday, America. We just had the 4th of July. It was basically everyone's second Christmas yesterday with the Podathon and the start of the Scott Fish Bowl. What else can I say about what today is? I don't know. But we're here. We're recording. We're back after off week last week. But we're back at it. We're recharged. We're all jazzed up. Got jazz hands going.
That's right. I do jazz hands just one at a time. I do it one at a time, and I do it down falling. Like that. Don't tell me how to do jazz hands. The beauty of jazz hands is that it's up to the individual to choose how they do it, Dustin. That's what I've been told anyways.
Well, fine. I'll allow it.
Begrudging acceptance of my jazz hands.
Yes, we've got a great episode, though, tonight. We are going to be talking about some muddled backfields and kind of dissecting them. Going into, I think there's about 15 on our show sheet. We'll see if we get through them all. We can kind of pick and choose as we're going here which ones we want to highlight. But yeah, we're going to give you the goods to win your redraft league this year. We're going to tell you which running backs you should be focusing on and why, and you'll thank us come the championship time because we give you the great advice here. And that's what we're all about.
Greatest advice on this side of the Potomac. That's a river, right? Somewhere in the continental United States, I think.
Isn't that more of a north-south river, not an east-west river?
Yeah, that's okay. We can just be on the top or bottom of it. We're team top. Are we top? I honestly don't even know where that is. I would
say team
northern.
top.
We're team top. Okay,
I think we're team top.
Done. We're the best. We have the greatest advice as a top that you're going to find. Can't speak for the bottoms out there, but as a top.
We should get back on track. This is going to veer into very dangerous territory soon if we keep talking top and bottom. Man. I think I'm just still giddy from the Podathon yesterday. That was so much fun. Big shout out to Sal and all the boys that put that on and everyone behind the scenes because that was just an incredible time. I must have watched about 8 hours of it altogether so far. Kept poking in throughout the day. And then obviously our half hour with Kate and Michelle was amazing in itself. So big shout out to everyone that was involved with that. That was a hell of a production. Cheers to you guys.
Heck yes. Yeah, listeners, if you're not aware of what the Podathon is, it relates to the Scott Fish Bowl, which is obviously the largest tournament in fantasy football, which also goes to charity, as does the Podathon. That's the entire point. They're trying to raise money to go to Fantasy Cares. I think I saw they're getting very close to $30,000 raised by the Podathon. So it was awesome to be a part of that. Our first year being on the Podathon. We both have been watching for quite some time, but 24 hours straight that they host that thing. They are Iron Men, and salute. But also, Dustin, congrats and cheers to you. Another big moment for yourself happened on the Podathon live. You got the invite to Scott Fish Bowl live on air. How good does that feel?
Oh, it's incredible. I'm still shocked that happened. Totally unexpected. As I was saying before we got going here, I literally could not fall asleep last night. I was still just so excited that happened. And it's really an honor. I wasn't blowing smoke yesterday on the Podathon when I said I was living vicariously through everyone and just glad to be a part of it and, being on the Podathon in some small way. But to actually get in, it's just fun to be a part of it. And, I'm glad I could step in and take a spot here at the last minute.
In the 9th hour, or the 8th hour, 10th hour, 12th, whatever that phrase is. But in any case, we were both reminiscing before we got on here about our draft recently. It's been going on for about a day and a half now at this point.
Mhm.
I think, speaking only for myself, but maybe for you too, there's already some questions sitting in my tummy about, did I do the right thing? Did I pick the right guy? And I think part of this episode that's going to be so fun is I'm probably going to prove my draft wrong already as we dive through these backfields. I'm sure I'll come with some question marks that will make me rethink some of my draft choices.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we can do that, we've got to do our normal house cleaning here. First, our beer of the week. We've got the, and I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, the Wisconsin Red Ale from Central Waters. Did I nail it?
Nailed it. That is perfect. See, because it's from Wisconsin, but they pronounce it Wisconsin. I'm sure there's like a better reason for that. It probably means something.
It gets its name from the Algonquin word for the Wisconsin River or Redstone River. So
is that real? Did you see that on the bottle?
That's on the side of the bottle.
Can you read? You've been holding out on me this whole time? Oh my God, I never look at the side of the bottle, Dustin, and I think you just proved to me. You were really good, I bet, at those, like, as a kid with the cereal boxes that had like the mazes and shit. I bet you're really good at it because your attention to detail is impeccable, I gotta say.
Oh, you gotta read everything. The fine print doesn't get past me. Let's put it that way.
Never accepted an iTunes agreement that you haven't read top to bottom. I'll tell you that much. How do you like it though? This red ale we got here.
For a red ale, it's pretty good. It's a little bit on the caramely side for me with those caramel malts, but that's how you get that nice, beautiful golden red color. It's really tasty though. It's a good beer. Pretty much anything from Central Waters is a great beer. I never have an issue with them. But yeah, it's kind of caramely. It gets a little bit on the sweet side for me. But yeah, having a couple of them, that's no problem. Like I said, just a solid beer. And for a red ale, it's a pretty good representation of it.
Yeah, I think I probably a little selfish here with this one. I picked out this week's beer. I love a good red ale. That's one of my favorite types, and you don't find them out in the wild that often. It's like 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. I love basically all of them. I will say this ranks towards the middle of that group. It's not as good as some of the red ales I've had around here, but it's I think you nailed it. It's a good representation of it. It's straightforward. I like it.
Absolutely. Next, should we go to our drunk trade of the week?
You goddamn right we should.
Drunk, hammered drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
Hit us, Jake.
This week's drunk ass trade comes in from @Danny_FFX on Twitter. Danny P. He submitted this trade. Now, this is one. He says, not every day someone sends you an offer that gives you DK Metcalf. So the drunk person was actually on the other side of this. Not the submitter, but the submittee, I guess. So here's the pieces, all right? It's a standard dynasty league. I don't even see anything about Superflex, so we can assume or not assume.
We'll just assume PPR.
Yeah, for sure PPR. Beyond that, I don't know. But the pieces involved. So what Danny sent away was Cortland Sutton, Devontae Smith, and Justin Fields. That's what he sent away. And he received DK Metcalf, Mike Williams, Zach Wilson, and a 2022 third-round pick. So anything jump off the page to you out of the gate here?
Yeah, I like the sent side personally better. And here's my reasoning. I feel like Justin Fields greater sign than Zach Wilson. I prefer the upside of Justin Fields much better. Devonta Smith better than Mike Williams.
Okay.
I've never been the biggest Mike Williams fan. I'm sure he'll have a fine season, but for a pick that was top 10. I think the Chargers took him in. He's never lived up to that hype, and he's always been very boomer bust. Yeah, even last year with Herbert there. I mean, it's the Keenan Allen show, and that's basically it. And then, you've got Cortland Sutton, basically Cortland Sutton for DK and a third. Obviously, DK wins that side, although I'm not as high on DK as a lot of other people. I'm slightly lower on him, and I'm higher on Cortland Sutton than others. So that's why I take the cent side. When you're getting a quarterback and two what should be top, two minimum wide receiver twos, I like that better than the DK side.
Yeah, I don't hate what you're saying at all. I think the surprise is the same to me as it was to the submitter. To Danny, was like, oh, they sent a trade for DK Metcalf, which it always feels like pulling teeth trying to get some of these uber hyped receivers sometimes. So the fact that they let off with that, which could be one of those distraction pieces. It's like, ooh, look at how shiny and awesome this is that you're getting here. Don't pay attention to the rest of it.
Right.
Just be kind and appreciate that I'm giving you DK Metcalf. And maybe that's what happened here. But I still respect and appreciate DK Metcalf as a top 12 dynasty receiver. I do think he just fits into that for me. You can argue if he's higher than that for you, and fine, he might be. He's right around the fringe for me, but I don't ever see Cortland Sutton as being that. He's not going to be a top 12. Like you said, top 20 makes sense. I could certainly find a way to squeeze him in there at least this year, even though coming off injury, I'm not super worried about that. Devontae Smith, though. I mean, he's one of the most highly touted wide receiver prospects in quite some time from people who know those things. So I do like that. Mike Williams, I think, is another example. So this guy sent the trade, but again, this is somebody who just got a bunch of hype. Mike Williams is now the ex-receiver in the Chargers offense with the offensive coordinator that made Michael Thomas the thing. And so, the hype bubble is it's full right now for Mike Williams. And again, that was probably just savvy trading by that guy who sent him away. I do like Zach Wilson, but you're right. I like Justin Fields a little more. So yeah, I'd probably take the cent side too, but I don't think it's crazy disparity here. But
overall, it's a fairly even trade. I mean, I can't say I hate either side or the DK side of it. I don't hate it by any means. Just if I was building a roster, I want guys that I believe in a little bit more. And for me, that's the cent side. Especially, like I said, really the tiebreaker for me is that Justin Fields versus Zach Wilson. I like his ceiling and his upside a lot more than what I think Zach Wilson will give you, especially in the short term.
Fair. And one last question here, because I'm curious, depending on the league size, that can sometimes sway these. So let's say that this was a 10-team league. Does that do anything, getting the bigger star and DK Metcalf back, or not really?
It might. In a vacuum, I'd probably say yes. Getting those, I think your point is spot on there. Getting those elite players in the positions gives you an advantage in those smaller leagues. So yeah, I think in a 10 team, I would probably go for the DK side just to get that elite player.
Fair enough. Well, we don't have to spend any more time on there because there was nary a running back involved in that. And this is the running back show. So I feel like we should skedaddle on here. But before we get into the juicy bits, it is my honor to tell you that this week's episode of DTFF is brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. Head on over to monkeyknifefight.com. If you sign up now using promo code DTFF, you will be matched on your initial deposit up to $50. NFL season, this is the last month without any NFL action until March of 2022, by the way. Just want to point that out there. In August, we will see some NFL action. So get over there now. Get your feet wet. Dive into some of the other sports that are going on. Obviously, basketball. Hey, Bucks. Hey, Bucks in the finals. Oh, shit. Go ahead and head on over to Monkey Knife Fight. Maybe get in on some of that action. Take the under for all of the Suns players and the over for all of the Bucks players. That's just one unbiased opinion on how you could do that. But anyways, again, monkeyknifefight.com, promo code DTFF today.
All right. Thank you, Jake, for that. So let's get into these running back and backfield committees here. So, Jake, I think what we'll do is we will switch off here. You see the list on our show sheet here. I'll start. I'll pick one. We'll talk about it. Then you pick one. We don't have to go in order by any means. We'll just kind of highlight the ones we want to. And then if we run through the entire list or we just get bored with it, then we can just call it a night. How's that sound?
That is perfect. I think that clause should be built into every episode, by the way, whether we have guest present or not. If we get bored of it, we're just like, all right, we're out. See you guys later.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. All right. So I will start with the first running back committee here on the list, and that's Arizona. And these are basically alphabetical on the list, just a little behind the scenes magic for our listeners out there. But we've got Chase Edmonds and James Conner. So the reason I want to talk about this is I think this really, truly could be like a 50-50 split this season. I feel like James Conner is going to get the bulk of the actual carries, and Chase Edmonds is going to get more of that receiving work. And personally, I think James Conner is going to have better fantasy production than Chase Edmonds this year. I think he's going to get those goal line touches, and he's going to get those touchdowns near the goal line there, where Chase Edmonds is going to be used in the passing game more between the 20s. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that Chase Edmonds is going to be seeing the majority of the passing work like he did last year when Kenyon Drake was there. James Conner obviously supplanted Drake, but the role there, like Drake was inarguably a better receiver than Conner, I think, at that point in his career and at this point in Conner's career. So, yeah, I think Edmonds is going to see more than he did last year there. I think that kind of comes down to, do you want the touchdowns or do you want the catches? Because I think Conner is going to get you the touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Kenyon Drake was top 10 in rushes inside the red zone last year, and he was bad. And Conner's better than he is. So I do like that for Conner. Like, I think it speaks to good value, I think, for both players. Because Kenyon Drake was fine last year for you. It was ugly getting there, but he was like RB16 in PPR leagues last year. I think Conner, if he stays healthy, could easily get that, but I don't think he'll stay healthy. Edmonds is nice because you don't need him to all of a sudden get a bunch of work to be really relevant for you. Because he was also relevant last year in that offense. He was RB25 last year. So even if he doesn't see a single extra carry, like, could he get around that again? Yeah, it could be reasonable. So I think both are somewhat more valuable than people are letting on so far.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up ADP here, and my computer's running very slow for some reason. So
it doesn't want to acknowledge Chase Edmonds, I think, is why.
Apparently,
no offense,
that's
it. No offense. But I know that neither of them right now are going in the first, 6 rounds at least. So they're definitely going to be mid-round or later targets for you in your drafts.
Yep. So here's the ADP. Yeah. So here's the ADP. You tell me who you'd rather have at their ADP. So Chase Edmonds is RB29 off the board at 63rd overall. And then James Conner is 35th off the board at 82.
I think based on health and health only, I would take Drake. Or not Drake. God damn it. I would take Edmonds. I don't want Drake. I will never draft Drake. Let me be clear on that. No, I would take Edmonds there because Conner, it's so tough to bank on even close to a full slate of games for him. I want to believe, but I haven't seen it. So would I rather have the RB25 overall playing 17 games, which would be Chase Edmonds, or do I want, say, the RB15 maybe for 8 games? That's how I'm choosing to look at it right now, and I would take the little dip there and take Edmonds.
Yeah, and that is the tricky thing with this backfield and James Conner is that he has been injured, and I hate to bake in injury when I'm projecting players. I like to assume full health, and I would like to think he's actually going to stay healthy, but obviously we haven't seen it the last couple of years. So I understand that. He's going 20 picks later, so almost 2 rounds later than Chase. So
yeah, it's not bad. Can I tell you who I might take over both of them, though? That's going a little bit later than both of them right now is Michael Carter at RB37, right behind both. I might just pass over both of them to get who I believe would be the number one in his own offense, which is a bad offense to this point in the Jets. But if he gets the majority of the work and they take a step forward, I'd rather have him over both.
Okay. Yeah. So we're split there. You have Edmonds. I've got Connor. So folks, do with that what you want. If you want the touchdown upside, go Connor. And if you want that PPR floor with the receptions, because you know he's going to get them, then go Edmonds. It's kind of a what's the saying? Half a dozen
Pick your
of one
poison.
and 50 of the other. I don't know.
Wouldn't it be 6? Is half a dozen not 6?
Like I said, I don't know how that goes. So just I like yours better. Pick your poison and run with it. So we're not helping with
math
this one
in
so
mind,
much,
which I like. That's bound to happen. But it is just it's your roster construction, it's your preference, it's what you need out of those rounds. It's great because you will have enough of your team assembled that you can make that decision easier of what you need at that point. So. Honestly, it's nice when you're greeted with those guys there. Now, I do want to jump ahead here to the third on this list, but Denver is getting really interesting because if you do follow beat reporters at this time of year, I mean, you probably shouldn't, but it's hard to avoid it because we're in the lulls of the offseason. But beat reporters keep coming out that Javonte Williams looks like he's going to be the guy to lead this backfield. But Melvin Gordon is there, and I don't think it's only the Wisconsin homer in me here that is saying Gordon still has some juice left. I don't think that this is like he's dead to rights and he's just going to fade away into oblivion. This reminds me of a couple of years ago where Mark Ingram was left for dead, and then he ended up being super valuable in that backfield still, and it could be a little bit of that situation. So who do you have your eye on if you had to choose right now, or would you stray from both?
If I had to choose, I would take Javonte Williams. So currently ADP, Melvin Gordon's 28th, and Javonte is 30th running backs off the board. And Javonte is going about 10 picks later than Melvin Gordon. So Melvin's still getting drafted ahead of him. But I'd take Javonte. I think if he doesn't start the season as the lead running back, he will have control of that backfield by the end of the season, the second half of the season. So that's where you're really going to get your value from him. If I were to draft, say, you get one of the top 5 running backs, say, in your draft. Say you pair it up with like maybe a Zeke or Kamara, Saquon, one of those. And this was your number 2, or hell, even if you grabbed him as your number 3 running back, I think that would be huge. Because like I said, by the end of the season, I really do think he's going to control this backfield, and Melvin Gordon is going to be playing that second fiddle.
Yeah, my only thought, and it's just a matter of what you're comfortable with drafting again. It makes me nauseous to think about taking a running back that might not really see the field enough for you until, I don't know, let's say hypothetically week 5. But you don't know that, right? So you're waiting and is this the week that he takes over? And then he doesn't. And then you see a wide receiver that really shines through that you want to pick up off of waivers, or you need a quarterback because yours got hurt or something. And he becomes one of those players that I would probably have that struggle with. Do I drop this guy out before he breaks out and takes over backfield? Or do I let him sit there and potentially clog my bench? And that's the part that makes me nervous, because at least with Melvin Gordon, the upshot of you drafting him is if he doesn't start off leading the backfield, oh, great. I know what this is. Javonte is taking over, basically. And then I can boot him off of my goddamn team so fast, which is kind of cowardly, I guess, as a strategy. But that's sometimes where I'm at with these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if, like you said, beat reporters are to be believed at this time of year, I mean, it sounds like Javonte is going to have that backfield sooner rather than later. And Melvin Gordon, he's had his, nicked up injuries. He always seems to have something going on that slows him down a little bit. He hasn't looked that explosive over the last few years. His yards per carry has been abysmal. And he's still got that. I know his DUI, was dismissed from the courts, but you never know if the commissioner is going to take some sort of action and suspend them for maybe, say, 1 or 2 games, just to be like, hey, even though you weren't charged, you did something wrong. Like, there could be something like that coming, right before the season starts too, that we're not expecting. So
that's fair.
While I think that's not likely, it still is a possibility. So, and I just like the youth. And like I said, Melvin Gordon just hasn't looked great over the last couple seasons. He finishes fine.
RB14 last year, I was going to say.
And his, I think his ADP this year accurately reflects where it should be. He's not getting drafted too high at this point. So I could see taking a chance on him, but I'd rather take the younger, more exciting player that I think is going to have more upside as the season progresses.
That's fair. Sorry, Melv. I wish I could put up a firmer argument for Melvin Gordon, but it really does come down to that week 1 confidence for me. That's basically the only edge I can give him.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next on your agenda here?
Who's next? Some of these are really gross, and I don't want to talk about them, but we kind of have to. Let's talk New England.
Oh, God, you weren't kidding. Okay.
I know. So we've got Sony Michel, Damian Harris, James White, and Ramondre Stevenson, a rookie that they just drafted this year. Who do you like in this backfield? I'm going to punt to you first.
Oh, jeez. As the athlete in the backfield, it's Damian Harris. Harris has been dinged up too a lot lately. And so we didn't get to see him at his full potential last season. And it's always tough with a backfield when you have a rushing quarterback like Cam to kind of get the true essence of what they are, because they're so hamstrung by Cam vulturing their touchdowns and taking a good chunk of their rushing plays from them. But here's what I do know. I hate Sony Michel for fantasy football. So I'm staying so far away from Sony. There's no way that I would trust him. I don't care what his ADP is. I don't care if he's free on waivers. I won't have him before the season starts. Probably not at any time throughout. Ramondre Stevenson, the rookie, right away has draft capital working against him and has him being a rookie in Belichick's offense working against him. So I think I've eliminated him. Where it gets interesting for me is Harris versus PPR god James White, or former PPR god James White. Because, man, he gave you some magical seasons. I mean, he is basically what you want as that late round PPR flyer. He's a lot of who's the guy for the Chargers that used to be there? Was it Danny Woodhead a few years ago? Always under the radar because the rushing attempts were never going to be there. But look at how many balls that guy catches. And there's still not great wide receivers there. Obviously, they added something. I mean, Nelson Aguilar got added and Kendrick Bourne, I guess. If you like those guys, then great. And the tight ends definitely improved. So he won't see as many targets probably, but is Damian Harris going to see any? That's my worry. He could see some more touchdowns, especially if Cam doesn't start the entire season and Mac Jones takes over early. Then I probably want Damian Harris. If he takes over or starts right away, I probably do want Damian Harris for the touchdown upside.
Yeah, you summed that up pretty well. just for reference, Damian Harris is going 76 overall, and James White, the next one off the board, is going at 140. So he's essentially free at that point. So I think for that PPR upside, I think that's the best bet. Take a late round pick on him, or take that chance that he doesn't get picked at all and pick him up off of waivers before week 1, if you so choose, after you kind of see how maybe that first week goes. But yeah, I think you summed that up pretty well. Like I said, it's a really gross backfield, and I didn't really want to talk about it, but I feel like that's one that a lot of people have questions for. And I just, while Cam's in there, you can't bet on anything for this backfield. I think once Mac Jones gets in, then things will become kind of more quote unquote traditional offense, where they'll actually will have running plays drawn up for their running backs.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Well, let's get into a little bit more exciting territory here to stay away from New England. This is obviously still messy. That's why we're talking about them. But there is a lot of excitement from a player from last year who blew up out of nowhere and a first-round pick in this year's draft. So we got Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, undrafted free agent darling James Robinson, who crushed last year and helped a lot of people on their way to fantasy championships.
I say league winner right there.
Right. RB7 overall, got basically all of the backfield work to himself last year.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's not happening this year, at least not to that extent, certainly, because Travis Etienne got drafted first round. Their second first-round pick was spent on a running back, which is wild. They obviously had a lot of other needs there. They chose to go ETN. So, Dustin, do you believe in repeat magic for James Robinson, or do you think that ETN just completely takes that away?
Oh, God. I still believe in James Robinson while his upside is capped, just because ETN he's been pegged as the third down back, which is typically the receiving back on most teams. It kind of caps James Robinson's upside. But I think James Robinson is still going to have a really solid season. Obviously, it's not going to be that high-end RB1 that we saw last year coming out of nowhere. But talent like that just doesn't go away just because there was another guy drafted in the first round. We've seen plenty of first-round busts, running backs drafted to teams. Not saying that ETN is going to be that. I mean, they're both going to have their place, and I know Carlos Hyde is still lurking on that depth chart as well, which to me is more of a insurance policy, familiar with Urban Meyer's schemes because he is his college coach. So I think that's why Carlos Hyde was brought in there. It's going to really be James Robinson and ETN there, and I don't know. I got to go with my gut and just say James Robinson. He's going 3 picks ahead of, or 3 running back picks ahead of ETN. So they are very close as far as draft capital goes. 47 overall and then 55. So within a round of each other. But I would take James Robinson personally out of this backfield.
Oh man, I don't hate it. It's their ADP is so close together, which is actually nice though. Actually kind of nice because at that point in your draft, I don't know, it would be stupid. It probably would be stupid. By the way, we're going to have JJ Zacharyson on the show pretty soon, and I'm sure he would tell me this is stupid because if I recall, last year he told me this was stupid, but I was like, what if you get them both? What if you take both? And I don't think his lesson from that episode has absorbed into my brain because I still ask myself that like it's valid. He hates that idea, and I probably should by default because he is much smarter than I am. I will say this. I actually just saw a tweet, and I want to give proper credit here, but at @dynasty_IM just posted on Twitter a few weeks back. He said there's been 4 running backs since 2010 to have multiple 1,600 plus rush yard seasons before the age of 21. 1,600 rush yard seasons. And they had at least round 3 draft capital, which obviously ETN does as a first-round pick. That group is CMC, Ezekiel Elliott, and Jonathan Taylor. And then Travis Etienne. And that's the end of that list. That is a wild-ass stat there.
Mhm.
And that got me pretty hyped up for him. It does come down to, though, do you trust the coaching? Because Urban Meyer, is he going to be smart enough to utilize him the way that we want him used? And he probably should just be used based on, scouting and whatnot. Because I want it. But is Visca Chenault actually the guy who's going to get more targets? Or is ETN going to be that guy? I don't know. I think I'll still take ETN, though. As long as their ADP stays similar and he doesn't creep up, then I'll take ETN.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm only picking James Robinson because that's the game here, that I have to pick one of the running backs. Personally, at this point in the draft, with some of the other running backs that are available, I would probably take a different running back altogether from a different team. But for this exercise, it's James Robinson.
Right on. All right, who do we want to dive into next?
I want to talk Rams. I think this is probably one of the more divisive backfields. I mean, you're either pro Cam Akers or you're not a believer in him, which I know that's usually how things go. It's either you're for or against. I'm such a genius. But yeah, we got Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Cam came on really strong last year at the end of the year. I think it was like the last 4 games. Just took the fantasy playoffs by storm. Played really well in the real playoffs for the Rams. But we have to remember Darrell Henderson, he was getting the bulk of the snaps earlier in the season, and he was injured during this time when Cam blew up. We have seen in the past that LA likes to use a running back for their main running back. They typically don't like to use a committee if they don't have to. We saw that with Gurley for a couple years once McVay took over. So I do think they would rather have a bell cow running back. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. I am not as big a believer in Cam Akers as everyone else, and especially at his ADP. I think it's just way too rich right now, and the hype is way too out of control for him. Right now, he is the 11th running back off the board at 14 overall. I mean, you're having to snag him early in the second round, and for such a small sample size that we saw last year, I don't know if I can pay that kind of draft capital for him. When there's plenty of other running backs that in that second round that I would definitely rather pay up for.
Yeah, I mean, the list of the guys going around Cam Akers is pretty appetizing outside of him. Like right behind him, Antonio Gibson, who I love. I mean, Joe Mixon is next, and we don't have to talk about Mixon because, that's worn out. But CEH is right there behind him. I think I'd rather have CEH, honestly. Najee Harris, I could see if you want the volume play, I guess, there. Of course, my man, Chris Carson. Or I load up on one of those top-tier running backs that's not going that much higher than Cam Akers. I mean, Austin Eckler is only going a couple of spots before him. I would so much rather slam Austin Eckler. Yeah, I said it the way that I wanted to say it, by the way. And leave that draft with him as opposed to Cam Akers. I know it's not his ceiling because he could finish better than RB11, but it just feels like it's drafting pretty close to it. And
absolutely,
it makes me nervous. Darrell Henderson is a much better player than people want to believe, and I think you nailed it with the timing of the injury. It's set everybody's minds askew because Henderson wasn't there during the breakout. And guess what? He's going to be there this year. I will say, they had the 7th most rushes per game in LA last year. So it is nice to know that. So if you wanted to take Cam Akers based on that, and even if they split the backfield, he shouldn't be super disappointing for you. It's not like the bottom should fall out and he'll be less than, RB24 or anything like that. But Henderson feels like another one of those excellent late round targets. Would you try and get him late in the draft like that?
Yeah, absolutely. He's going 129th overall for ADP. So again, right at the end of the draft, for a guy who I think it's going to be a little bit more split than people want to believe. I truly do believe that. I mean, Darrell Henderson was a second round pick just a couple years ago. It's not like he's some fourth, fifth round guy that happened to hang on and get some playing time because Todd Gurley got hurt, or Cam Akers wasn't up to speed last season with the shortened COVID off season. Like they spent up draft capital on him for a reason. They saw something in him. It's all the same coaching staff. It's the same GMs. So I think he's going to be more involved than people are going to expect. And like I said, with Cam Akers draft capital that you need to spend on him, I'm just not willing to buy into that right now.
Here's a fun one because they're going so close together in the draft. Basically, again, at the very end or off waivers after the draft, Darrell Henderson or James White?
I would probably go James White only because we know we know what James White is. We know you're going to get that PPR. You're going to get those catches out of the backfield. I think even with Cam there, he'll get his where he can be a good bye week fill-in or flex play. Darrell Henderson, like I said, the outcomes of possibilities is that he could be totally sidelined and Cam could be worth his draft capital. I mean, that's well within the realm of possibilities. I just personally don't believe that. But so I would go with James White, just more for that PPR upside on like I said, a flex bye week fill-in basis.
I dig that. I feel like we are just the warm water on the Cam Akers hype train, but somebody has to be.
That's right.
Comfortable with us being that role. Hey, look, you got to delve into one of the grosser ones, so I want my turn here. We got to talk about Houston. We really do. We got to talk about Houston, and it's the least. It's the least fantasy relevant team as a whole, but there has to be some value somewhere, especially in this back, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there has to be. So let's look at the names, and we'll only look at the top three because they've added just everyone damn player. It is the full kitchen sink back there. But David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, those are the big three names, if you want to call them still, big names, but those are the three that we're working with. So the ADP, I'll rip that Band-Aid off, at least for you listeners. It's gross for everybody. Or I should say it's low. I mean, it's what you would want given the names that we just listed. The top guy in ADP is David Johnson, and he's going RB 34. So, and obviously it only gets worse from there. So Dustin, now that you're not spending up on any of these guys, obviously, you don't have to reach for any of them, but even bad teams can produce fantasy relevance even in the backfield sometimes. So with all those caveats, anybody that you'd be willing to take a chance on here?
It would have to be David Johnson. I know it's kind of the ghost of David Johnson at this point in his career. I think we're never going to see the David Johnson, we did a few seasons ago. But considering you're not getting them until the 8th round at this point, as someone that can carry the ball and also a very good pass catcher, that will probably be on the field the bulk of the time. I know Phillip Lindsay's a good pass catcher, and Mark Ingram can, he's more known for pounding the rock. I do think that David Johnson will be the 1A of the BC group there in Houston. So considering how late you're able to get him, I think that's a fine value, and that's probably the one I would go with.
Yeah, I get it. I think the pass catching is there for Dave Johnson, and it's not there for anybody else. And so, yeah, I guess that's it. I guess that is it. And he's the highest, but like you said, 8th round. Especially if you're not a fan of taking running backs early and you need to start stocking up towards the middle of your draft, he is a fair name there because the guy, he caught a lot of passes and will catch a lot of passes because that team is going to have to throw a shit ton, no matter who the quarterback is there. I don't know if I don't know who we're actually pegging there, but whoever it is probably going to be dumping off to DJ quite a bit. Philip Lindsay does not catch the ball that much. Mark Ingram does not catch the ball that much, and he's old as shit. So, and David Johnson actually did start off last season really well. He had like 7 games basically where he returned a lot of value for you, better than flex value, like solid RB2 value for you for about half the season. So yeah, I'll take my chances there. We're in agreement on David Johnson. Look at us.
Hooray. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Buffalo here. There's a couple more teams I want to focus on here, but let's talk Buffalo first. We got Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and then Matt Breida was brought in here this offseason, just to muddy the waters a little bit more.
Good old Matty B.
This is another one that I don't know how to feel about this backfield. This is probably one of the more tricky ones that are out there as far as trying to figure out who's going to be getting the workload here. And in the end, trying to pull up my projections here. There we go. I think I'm going to end up leaning Devin Singletary. And that's very slight. I think he's going to end up with more passing work than Zach Moss come the end of the season. I think the rushing will kind of be split fairly evenly. I think the rushing touchdowns will be split kind of 50-50. But I think Devin Singletary is going to end up being more that pass catching back in that backfield. So I would give the slight edge to Breida. Oh my God. What a slip there. The Singletary. What say you, Jake?
I again, probably not going to take anybody, but I did add Zach Moss onto a couple of dynasty rosters here as just a pure throw-in. So especially for dynasty, nobody wants either of these guys truly. The one thing that leads Zach Moss's way for me is that I don't think either of these two are going to see a substantial rushing share. But the nice thing is Moss at least had, again, the red zone, the goal line work outside of Josh Allen, who was neck and neck with Zach Moss, by the way. They both had a 36% share of the rushes from inside the 10-yard line. But again, that's not going away. Like Josh Allen is going to keep doing that. But I'd rather have at least the other guy who can also get touchdowns there, who's not Singletary. So again, this is basically, we're coming down to Connor versus Chase Edmonds again. That's what this is. It's, do you want the touchdowns or do you want the catches? The nice thing about Moss is that we don't have to really worry about his health. And so that's why I would lean Zach Moss there. If I got to pick somebody, because you need solid floors for bye weeks and flex. So that's my Zach Moss argument in a nutshell there.
And again, these two are going within 3 picks of each other in draft, 99 and 102 essentially. So they're going essentially back to back right now. So the fantasy community is literally split on them because they can't decide who's more valuable at this point. So yeah, again, I think you said it perfectly. Pick your poison. Solid floor versus PPR upside, essentially.
The age-old argument. All right, well, let's get into a slightly different argument. This is, in terms of question marks, obviously, again, all of these teams have question marks. But it seems like the question marks have largely gone away for Myles Garrett in this. Who are the Dolphins going to sign? Are the Dolphins going to sign a big name free agent? Are they going to bring in Aaron Jones? Nope, Aaron Jones re-signed. Are they going to bring in Chris Carson? Nope, Chris Carson re-signed. Who is the name that's going to dethrone Myles Gaskin? And we didn't get one, at least not a big one. So now it's just him and Salvin Ahmed, who was usable last year for fantasy. And then Malcolm
Had
Brown
a couple of really good weeks.
That's right. And Malcolm Brown was the signing for them. And that's a pretty under the radar signing. He was there with the Rams last year, and he was just kind of an annoyance more than anything to Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, but he wasn't like a standalone running back value. And then Jared Dokes, who people are high on as a super late round guy who, if anybody's going to have the James Robinson breakout, they think it could be somebody like Jared Dokes. But how confident are you, I guess, in Myles Gaskin as hypothetically you didn't take the top dogs in a running back class so that you're around 4, let's say, before you want to sniff at a running back, and Myles Gaskin is there? Do you feel comfortable taking him as your RB1?
I think so. If he's going to be your RB1, he's right now the 23rd running back off the board at pick 45. So he's like right there, kind of end of the 4th round. Yeah, I think the only reason, obviously, Ahmed and got any play last year was because Gaskin got injured. Otherwise, Gaskin had that backfield all to himself. And I know he showed out well, and they brought in Malcolm Brown, like you said. That's just, like you said, more of an insurance policy, I feel like, because there was so many injuries last season. So I feel like Gaskin is pretty safe. And if you're picking him as your RB1, and he's 23rd right now off the board, I think his ceiling could be a lot higher than that. I'm not saying RB1, but I mean, he could, theoretically end up in that high-end RB2 category, because I do think he's going to have the bulk of that workload by himself. So I've actually got him projected as my RB13 when I statted everything out.
Ooh, I don't hate. Wowie zowie.
It seems a little high. I don't, that's obviously not where we ranked him, but that was just how my projections came out. So, I think you could get really good value out of him drafting him in that position as your RB1.
I mean, let's stay with the projections tone there, but I mean, that is screaming value then. And if you could, and now if you can get him as your RB2, where you have a comfortable guy in front of him, and then you're waiting for somebody who could potentially get you fringe RB1 work, don't hate that. So you have a lot more confidence in Gaskin than I do, and it's just because I haven't. It's like I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop with him, which is asinine at this point because it's just who are they going to bring in? Todd Gurley, who hasn't technically signed with anybody. I mean, I guess, but that's it. I think they are set with who they want there.
Yeah. And I think that if they didn't believe in him, they would have drafted a running back higher than getting Jared Dokes in the 7th round or 6th round, whenever he was drafted. So I think the team really does believe in him as being that more bell cow running back for them, at least for this season. Obviously, next season, come draft time, they have a shitload of picks again this next season. We don't know who the free agent running backs are going to be. I mean, there could be some big names out there. So I think for this season, at least, I think you can trust that he's going to get the workload.
Yeah, he's going to get that load. You heard it here, folks. Myles Gaskin is going to get the load. God, I'm such a goddamn child. I'm sorry, but I'm not.
It's been all episode here, just the top and bottom, the loads. Come on, Jake.
I say I'm better than that, but we both know that's not true. So why fool ourselves?
True, very true, very true.
All right, you wanted to talk about at least another one of these teams. So who do you got?
Well, we'll save the most muddled backfield for last here.
Oh boy.
And I think everybody knows which backfield that is. So we'll save that for last. So we'll each pay one more, and then we'll do that grand Pumbaa, so to speak.
Wonderful.
So let's talk about Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Here we've got Ronald Jones, playoff Leonard Fournette, Giovanni Bernard, who's brought in this off field. Those are the main three. You've still got Keyshawn Vaughn there, who I think is really just an afterthought at this point. So I have to say, I think I would take Leonard Fournette out of this group.
Really?
I do.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, we
Interested
saw
to
what
hear your reasoning.
we saw what he did at the end of the season and through the playoffs. He'd gotten released from Jacksonville late in the offseason. So I think it took him a little bit to learn that Bruce Arians offense, and the offense as a whole really didn't click until that second half of the season. And then we saw them really catch fire. So I think, he is always just an underrated running back for whatever reason. And I think he's going to outperform his ADP. I mean, right now, again, fantasy managers out there are just have no clue what to do because Leonard Fournette is 31st running back off the board. Ronald Jones, 32nd. I mean, they're literally back-to-back running back ADP. So I like Leonard Fournette. I think it's probably going to be quite a bit of a split backfield. But if I had to put my stake in the ground and pick one, I think Lenny is going to have the best value come to the end of the season.
Interesting. See, I actually see Leonard Fournette as the odd man out in this backfield. He to me just looks like the guy like, I don't know what your purpose is on this team, truly. And I know that that's mean, but I don't know what his purpose is because I think Ronald Jones is a better runner, like just a better rushing running back than Leonard Fournette is. Leonard Fournette's kind of like a plotter. And Jones is actually like a decent quality running back. I know he had a much higher yards per carry and yards after contact and stuff than Lenny.
Has Ronald Jones had a top 12 running back season in his career?
No, but he's also played for shit teams, Dustin. It's
Jacksonville was a bastion of great teams that Leonard Fournette played on. Come on.
All right, that's fair. But in Jacksonville, Leonard Fournette got all of the volume. It's the James Robinson argument.
Right.
But to me, he's a worse player than James Robinson is. That's like an actual NFL talent.
And you think
got all the work.
Fournette's been in the league forever and he's super old. He's only 26. He's still fairly young. He's in that prime of running backs yet. So
but
I don't know why.
He's got the mental processing power of an 80-year-old in that backfield, though. He just does not. He always looks so indecisive.
I understand why people hate on him so much. I just don't get it.
It's because, can I tell you one stat that blew my mind? I know he had limited carries last year. Like, he barely saw 100. He didn't have a single broken tackle all of last year. Not one. Ronald Jones, by contrast, had like 6 or 7 easily. Leonard Fournette didn't have a single one all year. He basically, again, he's a plotter. He just kind of, here I am. I'm going to into you. But all of the stats from last year definitely favor Ronald Jones as a runner. But the other thing is Gio Bernard takes away all receiving possibility. Like both of those guys suck. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette suck at catching the ball. They can't. They don't.
Not true.
They grease up their hands with hot dog grease
Leonard
before
Fournette
they get on the field.
Catch the ball. He can't catch the ball. Oh, yeah.
He can't from Tom Brady. I'll tell you that. Or he didn't from Tom Brady. It was dropsies. In Jacksonville, he did catch some number of balls, I guess. But Gio Bernard is, would you not agree, though, undoubtedly the best pass catcher in that backfield?
100%. 100% agree there. No argument.
So then, if the only reason that Leonard Fournette is going to see third down work is if they want to keep him out there during the hurry up and they just want one guy out there, and maybe that's what they do, and then you find some utility with Fournette. But right now, to me, he just looks like the odd man out. Like, I don't understand what his place on the team is. So honestly, I'll bypass both Rojo and Fournette and Fono to go get Gio Bernard in, like, again, the back end of the draft, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Essentially, right, like 152 overall.
Yeah, perfect. Because if Tom Brady can get a pair of hands in the backfield that he trusts, which obviously he wanted somebody there to be able to catch the damn ball for him, then I'll take that guy because they are a pass-heavy team, a great offense. So I'll take him.
Okay.
All right, one
You're
more
up.
before we get into the
big-
coup de
the big
grace
boy.
here.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess the only one that I want to do a quick hitter on here is what do we do with Philadelphia? In that Miles Sanders is in like this dead zone of running backs right now in your draft where it's like you get to this group and there should be somebody there that you want to take, right? But doesn't it give you a second thought when you get to this group of like, do I want to take him now and this running back now, or do I want to wait? So Miles Sanders, to me, leads that group. He's the top of that tier, if you will, but it's around guys like Josh Jacobs and J.K. Dobbins and that ilk. But then he has pass catcher Kenneth Gainwell, pass catcher extraordinaire, apparently, coming into Philly, who people have comped to like an Austin Eckler type of guy. So he's their rookie pick that got added. And Boston Scott is still there, who was sort of the Tariq Cohen, just to really go crazy with the comps here. In that offense, like he caught a lot of those balls there in Philly over the last couple of years. So obviously new quarterback, new-ish quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who played just a few games there last year. What do you think? I know we talked about SFB, and I know that Miles Sanders has made it onto your radar.
Mm-hmm.
So how hopeful are you for Sanders this year?
I think he can outperform his current ADP of 18. I think he can flirt with RB1 status. I don't think he's going to get into that. But I do think, having Jalen Hurts there, that I think they're going to probably run some more of that RPO type offense where some of that pressure will be off Sanders to actually have to like run the ball every time, and it'll make defenses think a little bit. He still is a very good pass catcher. We've seen that. Again, no, he was injured last year, nicked up now and then, which I think hurt him, obviously. Most players don't perform better when they're injured, just for all of you out there listening. So, yeah, I think he's going to come in healthy. I think he can outperform that our 18 running back draft ADP that he's got right now. Yeah, it's kind of in that you're looking at the end of the third, kind of early fourth-ish area. Taking him there, I actually don't think that's too bad a value. And I would actually rather have him over or I'd draft him ahead of some of the guys that are actually going before him right now, like Chris Carson, who we love. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Chris Carson. I just don't see Carson having the upside that Miles Sanders does. I think Sanders has a bigger ceiling than Carson. Carson will give you a very solid floor week in and week out. I actually like him better than J.K. Dobbins.
Agreed. I'm with you there. I am with you on Sanders over Dobbins here.
Mm-hmm. But even a couple of guys going after him with like Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, I would take Sanders just purely for the upside in that general area of where those other running backs are going.
Right on. See, yeah, he's the guy. Like I said, he's the top of that tier, but he makes me nervous. I get into that area, that grouping of running backs. I'm like, maybe I'll pivot to a wide receiver here because I don't have supreme confidence in any of those guys. Mm-hmm. And maybe I am feeding in too much to the Kenneth Gainwell sort of low-key hype that's out there. But like so many people have been like, he's the Austin Eckler in this offense. And of course, offensive coordinator is coming over there in Philadelphia who has some experience with an Austin Eckler type in the actual Austin Eckler. So, how much of the pass catching work does he take away, or the combination of him and Boston Scott take away? Because that's what was so attractive about Sanders was like, he's a do-it-all kind of guy. And now if he's not doing it all, you still hope that offense hums with Jalen Hurts there more than it did with Wentz. And so the opportunity should be there more, and that's great. But I feel like a broken record, but like Kenneth Gainwell at the very end of the draft, like, do I just stock up on all of these potential pass catchers in lieu of actual running backs and say, fuck it, whatever they get me, I guess I'm just going to be happy with James White, Giovanni Bernard, and Kenneth Gainwell? I mean, probably not, but
I guess so.
Something to consider, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but the main event here, obviously. Every year it feels like it should be this team.
And I think it will be for the foreseeable future here. So if you guys haven't figured it out yet, it is the San Francisco 49er backfield here. The gross of the gross as far as running backs, that we've got 7 running backs that could be fantasy relevant at some point.
Right.
Let me say that's 6. I was looking at the ADP here, and their fullback was included in there. So I don't think we can
You don't have any love for the juice man?
No.
Kyle Juszczyk?
Although he is the 5th most drafted running back over Elijah Mitchell and JaMychal Hasty. So some people are seeing some stuff in him. So yeah, we've got Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson, Wayne Gallman, and the other 3 that I mentioned in the last 30 seconds. What a backfield we've got here. Jeff Wilson, he's going to be out most likely for the first half to 3/4 of the season at a minimum. So I think we can kind of knock him out. He's going to be that once you see him coming back and he's might come off the pup, grab him a week or 2 before you think he's going to come off the injured reserve pup list and take a flyer on him at that point. But you should not be drafting him to start the season. Please don't be drafting him in redraft this year. He'll be out there in waivers for you. Don't waste that bench spot. So then basically what we're looking at is Mostert and Sherman. I think people are expecting to be the top 2 running back options in this backfield. If you had to pick one, who are you going to pick, Jake?
I don't know. Here's the thing is, like, the injury argument does have to come into play. And I know, like you said early in the episode, you don't want to project that way, but doesn't it feel like there are certain players you almost have to? And Raheem Mostert feels like that other guy, probably the only maybe 2 out of 3 running backs that are like that for me, where I have to bake that into their ADP for myself. Is Raheem Mostert great? If he gets the workload out of the gate, we've seen it. We know what it looks like, and it's fantastic. For those games, when you look on, Player Profiler or wherever, or Pro Football Reference, where they get the little asterisk and he is actually starting the game and finishes the game, they're amazing. Those stats are amazing. But how many of those are out there? They're very few. So I would rather, I think at this point, take Trey Sermon. And this is a little counter to my argument from the Denver backfield with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. We're like, we don't know that Trey Sermon's going to get the work out of the gate, but I actually think that he will. And he's somebody I'm comfortable stashing for the long haul, because with San Francisco, the one consistent is that if you wait 3 weeks, whoever you've stashed from their team will be relevant for you, because that's how that backfield works. So he's not one where I'd be like, I have to panic drop him. But I actually do want to call out Wayne Gallman here. I know kind of left him kind of in the gutter, but a beat reporter for San Francisco just today came out. And again, take this with a grain of salt, but they said San Francisco wants to run the ball 500 times in 2021 with Trey Sermon, Raheem Mostert, and Wayne Gallman. Gallman was the obvious third there in that list. And maybe that's just because Wilson is injured or whatever, but Gallman was really good with New York last year. I mean,
on a very piss poor New York Giants offense. I mean, he looked pretty good at times. And he's only 26. Like, he's not he feels like he's been in the league for about 10 years already. But he's actually fairly young. And I was going to bring that up about the age too with Mostert. I mean, he's 29. I mean, that is the age where running backs really, for the most part, unless you're Adrian Peterson or Frank Gore and you're, Terminators from the future, you start dropping off. And that's just the nature of the game. And I know Mostert, he came from Miami and he didn't get a lot of playing time early in his career. So maybe this has extended his career a little bit. And he could be one of those outliers that just plays really well, into his 30s, with kind of being that role player that he is. But yeah, with that the age and then the injuries kind of baked in there. I mean, none of these are going super high by any means, but I think I would take the late round flyer on Trey Sermon if I had to pick one. I think he's obviously the youngest. They traded up for him in the draft. You don't trade up for a running back unless you have plans to use him and you think it's going to fit your offense really well. So like you were saying, I think he may not start the season as the feature back, but I think he could end up with the bulk of the workload in what will indubitably be a split backfield throughout the season. But I think he can be the one that has the most value for the entire season.
Agreed. And San Francisco especially hasn't spent up on a running back in forever. So the fact that they did, it really speaks volumes to what they plan to do. I believe, I don't believe 500 rushing attempts is obviously a reasonable expectation, but I believe that is going to be such a focus, especially if they start with Trey Lance, who, by the way, we should mention, rookie quarterback Trey Lance could almost be the RB1 on that team. He is a phenomenal rusher, rushed for 1,100 yards in his last full season in college. I mean, he definitely has that capability, but I don't know I don't know that I'd love any of them, but again, for the sake of this game, if I have to pick one, it will be Sermon.
Right. Okay. Well, do you feel better now that we've talked about some of these, or do you just feel kind of gross and icky?
I feel absolutely disgusting. My hands feel dirty. I feel itchy. It's just not a good feeling right now to look at these. And I think if you've taken away anything for this episode, I really think the big headline should be draft safe, secure workhorse running backs this year, because when you start getting into the late rounds, these are the decisions that you probably don't want to have to make if you don't need to.
Yeah, I agree. And I know JJ Zach Reeson did an episode 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point now about the running back dead zone, which is basically rounds 4 through 6. Try to avoid drafting running backs there unless obviously the value falls to you. But that's kind of that weird area where you're not getting a bell cow running back and you're just basically drafting high-end handcuffs at that point. Which probably you're just banking on injury at that point, which you never want to bank on injury for any player. So you might as well wait and then get some of these PPR backs later on that have that kind of upside to them. So yeah, get those running backs early is what we're saying.
Do it well, like I've been doing in Scott Fishbowl. I've been hammering the shit out of running backs, and I feel great about it.
All right. So any last words, Jake, here before we sign off?
No parting words. Anything that I would say at this point would probably just be another scandalous bit of 8th grade rhetoric. So I think the faster that we move out of here, the better for our listeners.
All right. Well, I have something to say. We are going to be taking submissions here for our DTFF Redraft Listener League. What we're doing is you have to go out, rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. Please give us 5 stars. You can give us whatever rating you want. Let's be honest, but we're only going to accept these. We're only going to take 5-star ratings into our consideration for the Redraft League here. But we want a 5-star rating and a review. So write a review. You have to take a screenshot of it with the timestamp on it so we know it's current. Submit it to our Twitter feed or DM us directly. And then once we kind of get through the end of July here, we'll be holding a very special draft that we're going to tease and we're working out the details for. But we're going to try to do a live draft order for the draft and possibly live stream the entire draft. We'll see. But yeah, so we're going to start taking submissions here. So get those in, 5-star rating, screenshot it, write a review, submit it to us. We'll randomize it. We'll pick our league mates here end of the month. It's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. Yeah. Jake, where can people find you out there?
They can find me out there on Twitter accepting your 5-star review submissions for this draft at Jake Trowbridge.
And you can find the podcast at Drinking Fantasy. All submissions can go there if you so choose. And then you can find me at FF Dusty Dog. And until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.